And then so to see him now celebrated at the White House, it's like, okay, so let's talk about 9/11 again. You know, like what was that?
Ahmed al-Shaara playing basketball with members of our military in the United States White House on U.S. soil. Okay, a so-called former al-Qaeda terrorist visiting New York City for the UN General Assembly is such an insult to the American people.
Tucker Carlson's just sat down with Anna Kasparian to absolutely ransack the Trump administration for welcoming an al-Qaeda terrorist, the current leader of Syria, al-Shaara, into the White House with open arms, raising new questions about what 9/11 really was. Did we have to give up our civil liberties for this struggle in the form of the Patriot Act to fight al-Qaeda? Or is this just treason by our government? Let's find out what they have to say. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Unacceptable. So while you have the Mark Levins and people like him constantly defaming people as jihadists, Islamists, terrorists, hey, you got any word about al-Shaara cozying up to the Trump administration? Are we okay with that? Oh, he doesn't like Hezbollah. Okay, so I guess he's our ally because he doesn't like Hezbollah. It's just disgusting how much our government, again, regardless of which administration we're talking about, I mean, the Biden administration probably would have done the same thing, to be honest with you, right? And it's just sick to me that all of a sudden, actual terrorism, the terrorism that took out thousands of our own people and ended up dragging us into lengthy wars in the Middle East that killed more of our soldiers and tons of innocent civilians, by the way. That's okay. We're just going to forget about that. We're going to wipe the slate clean because this al-Qaeda terrorist doesn't like Hezbollah and is good for Israel. It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Well, and the irony is...
I really want to get that out.
The irony... No, and I'm so glad you said that. I mean, it raises a lot of questions about 9/11, by the way. I was told that al-Qaeda did 9/11 and killed 3,000 Americans. And I spent 20 years adjusting my life accordingly and covering all this nonsense around the world and really believing that. So if that's true... How do we have an al-Qaeda leader playing basketball with American servicemen? A. B, I was also told that, the Arab countries are the problem, right? So I happen to be in an Arab country with, well-connected people in that country, people who run that country, the day that Assad landed in Moscow and this character took over Syria. And I just happened to be there. So I asked, who is this guy? And their instinct was, this is bad. This guy's like a jihadi. He's a radical. They hate the jihadis, by the way, the leaders of prosperous Arab countries, probably of all Arab countries, because they're a threat to them. So,
yeah, that's exactly who this guy is. He fought as a terrorist against Americans in Iraq. That's what we were told about this guy. There was a $10 million bounty on his head. But guess who prefers him to Assad in Syria? Israel. Guess who wanted to overthrow the Syrian regime and destabilize it for their aspirations of the Greater Israel Project, expanding Israel's borders into Syria? Israel's regime wanted that. And Anna's right, Hezbollah is not the enemy of the United States. Hezbollah has not killed a single American on American soil whatsoever. Guess who is? The radical Sunnis, al-Qaeda. And I think this is explained by sheer treason by our government. There's been no episode more demonstrative of our ruling class's engagement in treason, aiding and abetting the enemy, serving their interests above our own, than in this example, where arms were poured into Syria throughout the 2010s to support overthrowing that regime. And they went into the hands of ISIS and al-Qaeda, including this guy that's now leading Syria, al-Shaara, who founded the original al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. It was called al-Nusra. He was recognized as such as from the leader of al-Qaeda at the time, Ayman al-Zawahiri. If you follow this, it's very clear. This was sheer treason by our ruling class, and it spanned into multiple flavors of our political class. It was, both Trump and Biden and their followers that supported this nonsense. If you want to read more about it, read up about Operation Timber Sycamore that had the CIA funding this operation to the tune of $15 billion.
They really don't like Islamists. I'm sorry, Mark Levin, who I don't think has ever traveled outside our borders, but that's just a fact. And they were very wary of this guy, extremely wary of him and bothered by the whole thing. And they understood that it was Turkey and Israel that did this, of course, and for their own ends. But they didn't like this guy. They thought he was too dirty. And then so to see him now celebrated at the White House, it's like, okay, so let's talk about 9/11 again. You know, like what was that? Did that evoke those questions in your mind?
I mean, absolutely. But you know, Tucker, I'm the bad guy because I acknowledged FBI files that detailed the so-called dancing Israelis. Okay, I'm the bad guy. But having
why is that bad?
Al-Qaeda,
Why is that bad to have if you arrest foreigners on your soil for celebrating the biggest terror attack in your history? Why are you the criminal for just pointing that out?
Well, because they were Israelis, of course.
Right. That's exactly what it is, right? If they were Germans, there wouldn't be charges of blood libel or anti-Semitism if you pointed that out. The celebration of a terrorist atrocity in the United States. There was something there, man. I think a lot of, personally, some of the kooky 9/11 theories are exactly that. Planes not flying into buildings and all this stuff people want to say. But I'm sorry, there is something there. These guys celebrated the 9/11 attacks, holding up, lighters. Some of them were proven to be assets of Mossad. They even had a cover company. It was like a construction company of something. But we're not allowed to talk about that. And Anna's exactly right as to why. Why? Because of their nation of origin. Because they were Israeli. Because that's anti-Semitism, right? To say that.
Okay. It's that simple. It's that simple. If they were, I mean, let's just be honest here. If the individuals who were arrested that day weren't Israeli and were instead, let's say, Lebanese, right, or Syrian or anything else, it wouldn't be controversial to talk about that. In fact, you would be encouraged to talk about that.
Yeah, she's right, actually. I didn't even think about that angle, but you would be encouraged to talk about that as regime change propaganda against those countries. But if it's Israel, we're not even allowed to mention that. You're just an anti-Semite if you bring this up, despite there being a track record and documented proof of these arrests and these connections to Israeli intelligence.
And so it's just the whole thing is sick because I was in high school when 9/11 happened. So I remember what America was like prior to 9/11. 9/11 crushed this country.
Yes.
9/11 convinced Americans to give some of their civil liberties away to our federal government in the name of national security. 9/11 encouraged the United States to go to the Middle East and engage in wars that we should not have engaged in, especially Iraq. And it hasn't ended since then. I mean, 9/11 is what persuaded the American people that it was a good idea to go into debt in order to fight these wars. We had an economic surplus in the beginning of the Bush administration. We are now drowning in federal debt, $38 trillion. It's getting worse every single year.
Well, to be clear, we had a surplus only when it comes to the budget, not the national debt. The national debt has never been erased completely since Andrew Jackson. But her point does remain. This has been wasteful. It's been absurd. All the excesses of the war on terror are just horrific. $8 trillion down the drain just for that. 5 million deaths worldwide. 20-year occupations of Afghanistan and Iraq for nothing. The Patriot Act shoved down our throats. The DHS created a new dystopian, surveillance security state agenda and agency. We have the Patriot Act, the NSA, surveillance apparatus expanding since then. None of it's been good for America. We've had thousands of deaths of American soldiers, and some of them coming back in body bags, others coming back with PTSD. That's what we get out of this nonsense, and she's right. It's continued since then. Syria was just overthrown in December. They want to overthrow Iran now. It's not going to stop as long as the U.S. is on this foreign policy debacle path.
And just to go back to what you said about Ben Shapiro, he and I were debating on a CNN panel where the topic of Social Security came up again, and he just kept talking about how Social Security is bankrupting this country. When I challenged him by mentioning the trillions of dollars the United States has spent on, yes, supporting Israel through, military aid, but also other things like bribing Egypt to play nice with Israel, and the trillions of dollars that we have fought in wars on behalf of Israel. You don't think that that's crushing our economy a little bit? You don't think that's contributed to our debt far more than our Social Security system, which I will admit, there is a funding issue there.
Well, both of them contribute to the monstrous national debt, that's for sure. It was wrong for Ben Shapiro to say that that doesn't contribute the $1 trillion Pentagon budget, but every year, $1.6 trillion in Social Security payments go out, too. I mean, they're both part of the same problem. It's about the entitlement state. In Social Security's part, it's a giant Ponzi scheme where there's more payments out to recipients than those paying in. And there isn't even people have this conception of Social Security that I've been paying into this for 30 years, and you have. It's a tax, and it's an egregious tax. But the problem is that government squandered that money long ago on fruitless wars and stupid corporate welfare transfers. It's just untenable. It's unsustainable. And how does the government finance it? They create new money out of thin air via the central bank, debasing our currency. We're always going to have that inflation nightmare, no matter how you engage in this kind of spending, whether it's warfare spending, corporate welfare transfers, Social Security, Medicare, all the expenditures that go into this state is just untenable. That's why we run a debt of, additional $2 trillion each year. It's why we're up to $38 trillion in debt. The debt payment is more than the Pentagon's budget now. So the answer really is it's both.
But Americans have paid into that system. Americans are entitled to that system.
Right.
Okay. They weren't handed that money. That money is the result of their hard work and their contributions to that program. What has Israel contributed to the United States? And why are they entitled to us literally taking out loans, like going into debt just to hand them more money? It's insane. $30 billion since October 7th has been funneled from the United States to Israel for them to carry out what I believe are atrocities in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Name a country they haven't bombed.
Yeah, normal countries don't bomb 7 of their neighbors after October 7th. Aaron Maté put it perfectly when he said that the propaganda in Hasbara, in Israel, is that nothing justifies October 7th. But everything justifies Israel's reaction to October 7th, meaning they can bomb whoever they want. Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen. You have Qatar. They, bombed Qatar. They tried to dismantle the Houthi regime, taking out half of that cabinet. That story completely disappeared. And now they want to open up an 8th front against the United States. A war of propaganda. That's the battle that Netanyahu talked about in that meeting with influencers when he said the weapons of war change. We need to evolve with them. And he's called this battle an information war against the American people, the 8th front in this war. That's what we're dealing with. This is our greatest ally in the Middle East.
So I just think that it's important to have these conversations. And I understand that people like Mark Levin will get very irritated by it, will get very offended by it because, he can't respond to it effectively or substantively. You can't defend the indefensible. The only thing you can try to do is shut people up. But some people can't be silenced. I'm one of them. You're another one of them. And they can go ahead and smear us all they want. But, when it comes to the marketplace of ideas, I think Americans have spoken in regard to who they agree with the most on this matter. And it's because they have felt the economic ramifications of the U.S. alliance with Israel.
I don't see how this particular set of beliefs wins any election. So if you only care about serving a foreign power, an irrelevant foreign power, you're not getting anything in return for it, and you don't care at all about the condition of your own country, I just don't see a market for that. I mean, I disagree with it. Of course, I'm repulsed by it, of course, but as a sort of matter of democratic principle, I don't see how you get to 51% in an election with that. I just don't think that has a future at all. I think most people look at that and are like, no.
Absolutely. That's what drew so much intrigue to Trump, is that he represented, It's turned out to be fraudulent, if you ask me. This idea that the American interest should be served before these foreign interests, even if it's Israel. Trump didn't say that because he was tied to the hip of Israel even in his first term. We know that from tearing up the JCPOA, moving the embassy of Jerusalem, moving the embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing the Golan Heights, etc. All those things were done on behalf of Israel's government, and we get no return on interest on that. Tucker's absolutely right. I've seen people try to make the case that, we make out like bandits on this. It's the best money ever spent because the money we give to Israel means they have to purchase our weapons. It's like, but that's like saying that a power cord plugged into itself is your economic theory. It doesn't even make sense. That is going to bring about prosperity, is just dumping money, even if it's in the form of weapons, into this hole. You're just funneling money to killer and bomb makers at Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, then, that's complicit in this entire empire building scheme.
So why wouldn't there be some convergence from either side, all sides? Why wouldn't you have like a true, let's just argue about what to do to help America party? Like, isn't that inevitable?
I feel like that's in some regard forming already. The two-party system, I don't think bodes well for the American populace. Like, I think what actually makes a lot more sense is maybe don't fully disregard labels if that's something that you're into. You want to think about labels. But consider that there are areas of agreement, actually vast areas of agreement, between the two sides, especially as it pertains to foreign policy, especially at this current moment. So the idea that I wouldn't be willing to align myself with someone on the right who I might have a ton of other disagreements with, but we have the agreement on, hey, we need to find a way to organize and get our federal government to prioritize us. I'm going to work with people.
Yeah, I'm with her 100%. I think there need to be modifications to the political paradigm, which I view as a prison in the United States. This left-right paradigm where everything that goes wrong, it's the other party's fault, and vice versa. I mean, that is your mind locked into a prison when you see this single issue coalition being very powerful. Now, will it manifest into a particular political party? I don't know, but I kind of think that's irrelevant. That was supposed to be the GOP under the America First MAGA wing, right? It proved to be fraudulent. And I'll be honest, there are multiple third parties that do seem to represent these ideas, particularly the Libertarian Party and the Green Party. But what does that mean? You're not going to vote for them. Most people aren't going to vote for them. Hell, I'm a radical libertarian. I don't want to vote for them when they have terrible candidates. So how can I blame people? So I think the best course of action is just these single issue coalitions. It doesn't have to be done through a political party. It can be a parallel structure built to support that issue alone, leaving all other viewpoints on the table. I don't have to clash with Anna Kasparian on economics. I will work with her for this end goal. It's very important. I prioritize that very high, and I wish more Americans were oriented in that direction rather than tribalistic, uniparty politics.
Who agree with me on that? I don't care where they land on the political spectrum,
agree. And if they're willing to admit fault in public in a sincere way, anyone who will do that is an ally of mine. Whether they regard me as an ally is another question, but I regard anyone willing to do that as an ally, both for moral reasons, it's my religion, but also for practical reasons. The only reason that we ineffectively bombed the nuclear sites in Iran is because no one ever acknowledged that Iraq was a mistake, Libya was a mistake, Afghanistan, the 20-year occupation, was a mistake. Having nothing to do with how we withdrew, we shouldn't have been there for 20 years. It was all a mistake, and nobody ever admitted it, much less took responsibility, much less accepted punishment or sanction for it. And if you don't do that, it doesn't get better. It just gets worse.
Yeah, I think Tucker's exactly right with that last statement. Just the idea of being drawn into an Israeli war versus Iran is a repudiation of logic. It's kind of a smack in the face to the thought you might have learned something about the Iraq or Afghanistan occupation. He's exactly right there. And like him, I give great credit to people with the humility to admit their past mistakes, backing policies that panned out so poorly and murderously, as Tucker himself has, actually. Actually, I think that's why so many Americans love Tucker Carlson so much, and I think even more so you can say this about Tucker than so many other pundits and influencers, is that he's admitted fault for backing these wars in the past. He said, hey, I was cheering on this neocon stuff back in the early 2000s, and he was. You watch Crossfire from those days, he was. He was backing the Iraq War. Guess who else did? So did I. It was a mistake. It's murderous. I still need to do penance for it, and having this channel as part of my penance, I hope that I'm compensating for that activism. I was a nobody at that time, of course. Didn't have any influence, thankfully. I'm glad I didn't have influence at that time whatsoever, because what I was saying was so atrocious. I was backing the Wolfowitz and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Richard Pearl talking points about why we had to export democracy to Iraq, and why this would be so beneficial to the United States. Why, if you weren't with us, you are against us. You were an unpatriotic American. Just all that nonsense. Those are things that Tucker Carlson himself has admitted about his past, and he's changed for the better. It's a redemption arc. It's a redemption arc that I think a lot of Americans have been on. They see themselves in that kind of shifting in sensibilities about U.S. foreign policy, which has been an abject disaster. And one of the worst ramifications of that is rolling out the red carpet for an al-Qaeda terrorist in Washington, D.C., shaking hands with them, acting like there's nothing wrong with this when we were so hell-bent in the war on terror against al-Qaeda. So either we were totally lied to by our regime, and we were in some respects, or they're just treasonous by welcoming this guy into the White House like this and pretending there's literally nothing wrong with that, just because Israel wanted him more than Assad to run Syria. That's where we're at. I'm with Tucker Carlson and Anna Kasparian in denouncing that and, just ripping the administration for doing that. It is a total slap in the face, but there's a lot here under the surface that has led to things like that. And it is the case that if you want to know who America's future enemies are, look who you're funding right now. That was the case with the Mujahideen, with Iraq, and it will probably be the case with Zelensky and Netanyahu. Netanyahu's already our enemy. Let's just be real about that anyways. So is Zelensky. But that's what you get if you're an American taxpayer. What do you guys think, though? Do you think Tucker and Anna Kasparian were right about this? What does this say about the MAGA Civil War playing out? What does it say about America's backward foreign policy? Are they correct about this mentality? Is it going to be shattered? Are we going to leave the Israel First plantation soon? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Tucker Carlson. Love this segment, great interview. Have a lot of overlap with Anna, too, on foreign policy. I really appreciate her for that. And if you like this video, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below. That'll help support my channel, and I'll really appreciate that if you do that. And in return for that, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public. You'll be able to watch those members-only videos right now if you do that. Also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below for that. Free of charge. I'll shoot you that in PDF form. No obligation whatsoever. Totally free. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.